What a busy offseason it's been for the Philadelphia Eagles after winning Super Bowl 59. And one move that I think could happen as we go into the NFL draft, or maybe even during the NFL draft, is a Bryce Huff trade. Now, last offseason, in that headline offseason for Howie Roseman, in which he made a bevy of moves which helped propel the Eagles to winning the Super Bowl, Philadelphia signed Huff to a 3-year, $51.5 million contract. It didn't work out. Saquon Barkley in that signing was a massive hit. Zach Bond ended up being a first-team All-Pro, finalist for Defensive Player of the Year. Bringing back C.J. Gardner-Johnson really helped that Eagles defense, the leadership, the big playability, the physicality, the confidence, and the swagger. Mekhi Becton at right guard was a fantastic player for Philadelphia, one of the top interior offensive linemen in the game, and at the price that the Eagles signed him to, $3 million, he ended up being a steal for this Eagles team. Bryce Huff was not that. I mean, 3 years, $51.5 million, $34 million in guaranteed money, just having 2.5 sacks with his playing time having decreased throughout the year to the point where he wasn't even active in the Super Bowl. It was a whiff by Howie Roseman. There's no doubt about it. He would probably tell you that behind closed doors. And I thought what was telling was that right from the get-go, there were murmurs. There were conversations that Bryce Huff wasn't having a good training camp. Bryce Huff wasn't having a good preseason, wasn't understanding Vic Fangio's scheme. Vic Fangio didn't necessarily like him because he was a stand-up pass rusher who was used to being in that three-point stance, who wasn't that good against the run. And early on, we saw that Fangio didn't trust him from the jump, didn't run with the ones a lot in training camp, played deep into the preseason because Fangio said he needed reps and to understand the scheme. And then what happened during the season? Huff's snap counts were Jekyll and Hyde. They were up and down, inconsistent, and they ended up being pretty minimal. It got to a point where in the NFL playoffs, Bryce Huff, after getting $34 million a year, or $34 million in guaranteed money, after a year in which he had 10 sacks in 2023, brought in by Philadelphia because they had that need at that edge rusher spot, was a non-factor in the postseason. Jalix Hunt rose to the occasion. He developed before our very eyes. Nolan Smith ended up being a fantastic player and made a huge leap from year 1 to year 2. 6.5 sacks in the regular season. 4 more in the playoffs, obviously along the interior. Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, Milton Williams, Moro Ajomo playing very well. Then Brandon Graham came back off that torn triceps injury, which he suffered in Week 12, to play in the Super Bowl. And Bryce Huff wasn't even active in the Super Bowl against Kansas City. He was a healthy scratch. Now, earlier in the year, he had to sit out a couple of games because of that wrist injury that he suffered. But think about the Eagles' formula for beating the Chiefs. Taking down Patrick Mahomes. Why did they make him look lost? Why did they fluster him with a pass rush? Getting home with 4, dropping back 7, and they were relentless with that front 4, with that pass rush. Bryce Huff wasn't even a part of the equation. So once again here, when you think about the future of Huff with Philadelphia, think about the Eagles' actions, right? A people's actions are very telling. Vic Fangio didn't like him from the start. After signing that huge deal, clearly he was a Howie Roseman signing, not a Vic Fangio signing. Barely played in the playoffs, didn't have him active for the Super Bowl. The Eagles let Josh Sweat walk, then they signed Josh Uche and Azeez Ojulari. Now the thing here with Howie Roseman, circling back, he will admit a mistake. He will move on quickly. He will try to flush it. And I do think that Bryce Huff has some trade value across the NFL, albeit at that salary cap number, although the salary is not guaranteed beyond 2025. But teams across the NFL are always starved for some pass rushing talent. And that's why I think teams could be in the market for a Huff trade, and that's why Philadelphia could just take whatever they can get for him at this point, because they also seem to be set along that defensive line. Huff is a 26-year-old edge rusher who wasn't a good scheme fit for the Eagles. He can be a good scheme fit somewhere else. I think that he can play. He was a UDFA who really propelled his career, progressed and improved. Just didn't happen with Philadelphia. And sometimes these free agent acquisitions, they don't always pan out. But Huff is also 1 year removed from having 10 sacks and 67 pressures in 2023 under Robert Saleh with the New York Jets. That was top 15 among all edge rushers in the game. And so if the Eagles can get off of that contract, I think they will. It's also a good draft class for defensive linemen. And even though the Eagles might only be able to get a late round pick, the contract is something that I think they would like to move off of. And if you're the acquiring team, if you trade for Bryce Huff, you're getting a 26-year-old who had a down year, but you saw in 2023 what he's capable of, and all you have to do is squander a 5th, 6th, maybe a 7th round pick. There are 8 teams that come to mind as far as being Bryce Huff trade destinations. These are teams who are either good scheme fits or who are in the need for a pass rusher or just make sense for Huff, right? The San Francisco 49ers. Guess who their defensive coordinator is? Robert Saleh, who was a huge fan of Bryce Huff. When you think about that Niners roster, opposite of Nick Bosa, they are extremely thin at defensive end. They have a lot of salary cap space as of right now. So Huff reuniting with Robert Saleh makes sense for the Niners defense, and it makes sense for Huff himself. They also have some late round picks that they can give up, a couple of 5th rounders. The Atlanta Falcons, they've been in the market and in need of pass rushing help to try to get after the quarterback. The Chicago Bears could use another pass rusher at that defensive end spot. The Los Angeles Chargers, they lost Joey Bosa. They could replace him cheaper with a player like Huff. The Tennessee Titans, they had an excellent defense last year. Will Levis was trash, but a lot of people lose sight of the fact that that Titans defense was good. They moved on from Harold Landry. Could they go after a player like Huff, especially if they don't take Abdul Carter #1 and they go with Cam Ward to get their future quarterback? The Green Bay Packers in need of some pass rushing help. The same can be said for the Jacksonville Jaguars, and the New England Patriots still have some financial capital, and they seem to be very aggressive in trying to build around Drake May while he's on that rookie contract. And it wasn't all that bad for Huff in 2024 when you take a look at some of the analytics on only 182 pass rush snaps. Again, barely played for Philadelphia. He did have 17 hurries, and he had 20 pressures. 1 quarterback hit, and then with how he was graded out, he was in the green here with the overall Pro Football Focus grade of 68.3, a pass rush grade of 68.2. With the Jets, he was not known to be a good run defender, but the run defense grade there of 60.2, not bad either. What's also telling is that when he was with the Jets and had 10 sacks and 67 pressures, that was on under 50% of the snaps. So if he plays a little bit more, I think those numbers can be pretty damn good. The return will only be a late rounder. I do want to emphasize that, but don't freak out about it because you're moving off of that salary. You've brought in a couple of players who can help you replace Huff and maybe do an even better job. And I think Vic Fangio probably had a say in bringing in Azeez Ojulari to this 1 year, $3 million contract, $2.7 million cap hit, and a Josh Uche, 1 year, $1.9 million, $1.3 million cap hit. What's notable about these two players, they are comfortable rushing the passer as stand-up pass rushers. Uche, in particular, is comfortable with dropping back in coverage. With Huff, he made a name for himself with the Jets when he was in that 3-point stance or in that 4-point stance. He's more of a hand-in-the-dirt type of pass rusher, and he is not comfortable dropping back in coverage. And so you get rid of Huff, you get rid of that salary, and you sign Uche and Ojulari for very affordable contracts. This could be a Howie Roseman flex if he can work out a trade. Now, you still have needs at that defensive end spot, but you can address that in the NFL draft. This is a very good draft class for defensive linemen. And for Uche, I think that he could have a really good year for Philadelphia. Not a lot to make the team, but if he does, bend, twitch, speed coming off that edge. Him and Azeez Ojulari, similar players in that regard. And Uche, since 2022, has a pressure rate of 16.7%. That is 6th among all edge rushers in the NFL. Ojulari, he's 24 years old. He's going to be 25 in June. He has to prove that he can stay healthy. That's the biggest thing for him. But in 46 games and 30 starts, he has 22 sacks. If he can stay healthy, I think that he can be an impact player for this Eagles team. Which also brings me to this when we talk about roster construction. You think about some of the moves that the Eagles have made this offseason. I think Howie Roseman has let Josh Sweat and Milton Williams walk because he's very high on two young players who I think can break out in 2025. That's third-round pick from the 2024 NFL Draft, Jalix Hunt, who really came on in the playoffs and in the Super Bowl, and defensive tackle Moro Ajomo, who sneakily was one of the highest-graded pass-rushing defensive tackles in the NFL last year alongside Milton Williams. And he has an opportunity, with him being still young, to maybe even be better than Milton Williams. Jalix Hunt in the NFL playoffs had an overall Pro Football Focus grade of 74. That was 12th among 60 qualifying edge rushers. A pass rush grade of 76.5. That was 7th. He had 2 sacks, balled out in the Super Bowl. That was 6th among edges. 9 pressures, also 6th, and had 6 hurries. That was 7th. And then Moro Ajomo throughout the entire 2024 season had an overall PFF grade of 68. That was 39th among 219 defensive tackles. A pass rush grade of 82.6, 5th at that position. Guess who was second? Milton Williams. But the thing I want you to focus in on here for Moro Ajomo, the pass rush snaps. He's going to get more playing time with Milton Williams getting that bag from New England. 268 pass rush snaps last year. 64th at the position. That number is going to go up. Another year under his belt, I think, is going to help him. And I think that he could have a breakout year here in 2025. And the Eagles need it from that position. 26 hurries. That was 24th. And he had 31 pressures. Again, on a limited snap count basis. And so the Eagles can afford to trade away Bryce Huff. They can afford to move off of Josh Sweat and Milton Williams if those other players who the Eagles are clearly very high on step up. If the Eagles didn't love them, they wouldn't make some of the moves that they've made this offseason. And I want to emphasize again, this is a position group along the defensive line that you can target in the NFL draft to also bulk up that depth. Real One roll call. If you enjoyed today's show, give me a real one down below. Give your feet a breather with Brunt. Awesome work boots here. And be sure to give me a follow on X and Instagram at Chase_Senior. In addition to all of the long-form Eagles content here on YouTube, I'm always talking birds on social media.